In a development that has sent shockwaves across the country and echoed beyond borders, President Sir Ramaphosa has resigned from office, leaving his allies and detractors in total shock. The resignation, announced in a hastily convened press conference just outside the gates of Parliament, has thrown the African National Congress (ANC) into chaos and left South Africa with a sudden and destabilizing leadership void at a time of increasing political, economic, and legal uncertainty. The surprise resignation came after what sources said was an explosive and emotionally charged closed-door session between top ANC leaders and Ramaphosa himself. Based on senior party sources, the president was confronted with a torrent of rebellion as deep-seated internal conflicts within the ANC finally burst their boil. Several factions were said to have issued thinly disguised ultimatums, threatening publicly to disown Ramaphosa unless he voluntarily resigned. The mounting discontent was not just fueled by a series of corruption charges and worsening economic prospects, but also by persisting tensions surrounding international legal scrutiny that had started to engulf the presidency in the last several weeks. At exactly 10:43 a.m., Ramaphosa came out of the meeting looking stern. Surrounded by a visibly nervous security detail and a few senior staffers, he addressed a throng of reporters with a short but theatric speech. After much contemplation and in the country's and our cherished movement's interest, I have made up my mind to leave office as President of the Republic of South Africa immediately, he declared, his tone firm but grim. I can no longer continue to head a divided house, nor be the face of a movement that has lost its moral bearings. The ripple effect of the resignation hit hard and fast. Within the ANC, there was pandemonium. The governing party, already fractured by factionalism, power politics, and backroom dealing, was now bereft of an overarching leader at the top. Deputy President Paul Moshetel, potentially a natural caretaker leader, was reported to be abroad on what officials termed an undisclosed diplomatic mission. Other senior ANC figures, including some of the country's provincial premiers and members of the National Executive Committee, were themselves mired in scandal. Thus, the party had no uncontentious accession strategy to offer. Parliament also plunged into chaos. Minutes after Ramaphosa had made the announcement, opposition leaders requested an emergency sitting. Parliamentarians across the floor began shouting at each other, hurling accusations of sabotage and betrayal. The Speaker of Parliament, visibly strained, was compelled to postpone the day's legislative agenda indefinitely. Opposition parties, mainly the Economic Freedom Fighters, EFF, and the Democratic Alliance, DA, called for an urgent vote of no confidence in the ANC government, arguing that the president's resignation was a symptom of a terminally ill administration. This is not an ordinary resignation. It's an implosion of the ANC command structure in its entirety, political analyst Zinol Sam said in an interview with local media. Ramaphosa's resignation, he added, signals the start of a power vacuum at the top of South African politics. The ANC, he noted, has been balancing on the edge for more than a year, but this time the party enters unknown territory, and the battle for control within the movement could get nasty. Nationwide, the response was contradictory and emotive. While in large cities such as Johannesburg, Cape Town, and Durban, some protested in the streets, welcoming the president's resignation with banners featuring the words, "Accountability at last" and "Time for change," others expressed anxiety and dread. To many of those protesting, Ramaphosa's resignation was long overdue. They cited his perceived inability to fulfill his promises of good governance, economic transformation, and job creation. But not everyone in South Africa was excited. Many citizens, especially in townships and rural communities, expressed fear of what was to come. "This is not what we wanted," civil servant Turbo Lang from Soweto told the Financial Times. Yes, there were issues under Ramaphosa, but at least he provided some sense of stability and legitimacy following the Zuma era. Now the future seems scarily unpredictable. Opposition politicians quickly seized the moment. Julius Malema, the leader of the EFF, made a scathing public statement within hours of Ramaphosa's resignation. The ANC has imploded, he said. They are directionless, corrupt, and leaderless. The South African people need to be given the opportunity to select a new government, not to have one foisted upon them by backroom politics and corrupt elites. Malema demanded that national elections be held immediately, saying any further delay would undermine public confidence. Democratic Alliance leader John Steenhuisen echoed the sentiment. This resignation confirms what we've been saying all along: the ANC is no longer capable of governing in the interest of South Africans. The only democratic solution is a snap election. Let the people decide who should lead this country through these turbulent times. Global reaction came quickly, and with concern. All the major international news agencies, including CNN, BBC, and Al Jazeera, ran the story under headlines such as "A South African President Resigns Amid Political Crisis." Financial markets responded with immediate volatility. The South African rand fell sharply during early morning trading, and investors warned of further instability unless rapid clarity on the nation's direction was restored. There was cautious applause from diplomats in the United States, the European Union, and several neighboring African nations for an orderly and constitutional transfer of power. The United Nations issued a brief but pointed message urging all political stakeholders in South Africa to prioritize national unity and uphold democratic principles. Within the ANC, a Crisis National Executive Committee (NEC) session was called for the next day, with top party leaders reportedly split on whether to appoint an interim caretaker leader or to demand a national consultative conference that could result in a broader shake-up of the party. Sources within the ANC said younger groups were demanding a generational change in leadership, while veterans dreaded further destabilization. At the same time, civil society groups, unions, and student organizations began mobilizing. The South African Council of Churches issued a call for a national day of prayer and dialogue, warning that the nation would plunge into greater division if leadership were not quickly and democratically restored. The Congress of South African Trade Unions, COSATU, once a close ally of the ANC, released a cautious statement expressing concern over the future of economic policy and the protection of workers in a potential post-Ramaphosa world. As South Africans awoke to a new and uncertain political landscape, questions mounted. With the ANC in no position to offer a united front and Parliament effectively paralyzed, speculation buzzed: would Moshetel return in time to steady the situation? Would ANC factions unite behind a compromise candidate? Or would internal strife render the party ineffective?